Hello everyone, this is Stjepan. In this video I'm going to cover the Breyer variation of the closed Ruy Lopez. The variation got its name after Gyula Breyer, who was a Hungarian chess prodigy from the beginning of the 20th century. He was a part of the modern school of chess and he actually contributed a lot to opening theory, and there is a few variations named after him, but this is the most important one. He died young in his late 20s, I think, and it's too bad because he could have definitely made a much greater impact on chess theory had he managed to live longer. The theory of the Breyer variation has been developing for the last 50 years, I would say, and it's one of the most important and one of the most often played variations of the closed Ruy Lopez, and it was a favorite of many players, such as Anatoly Karpov and even Gata Kamsky today. Magnus Carlsen is playing the variation, Bobby Fischer played it, and it's a very solid way for black to fight for control in the symmetrical e4, e5 opening. And it's considered one of the best ways to fight the Ruy Lopez in general. The Ruy Lopez starts after the moves pawn to e4, pawn to e5. All moves are designed to fight for the center for both sides. Knight to f3, increasing the pressure on d4 and d5. Black defends with knight to c6, and bishop to b5, now challenging the knight and indirectly fighting for the center. And all the moves are designed to fight for central control in the most direct way. And the Breyer variation branches out from the closed Ruy Lopez, which starts after pawn to a6, not going for the Berlin or the exchange variation, bishop to a4. The bishop retreats, knight to f6, and in this position white has two options. One is to castle, which is the main continuation and the one that leads to the closed Ruy Lopez, and I would just like to mention another move here in this position, which is d3. And d3 simplifies the opening battle very much and avoids almost all theoretical variations. And the move is not bad. It solidifies the center, opens up the dark squared bishop, and makes white's position much more stable, but theory says that this is slightly less active and that white is relinquishing a part of his opening advantage. It's a move worth considering as a surprise weapon, perhaps if your opponent is preparing for the Breyer or any other highly theoretical line. And the plan is similar for white after d3. Instead of castling, he will play c3 eventually, plays the bishop on c2 and fight for the d4 break. But this is just a different approach to achieving the same goal pretty much. But castling in this position is by far the main and the best move. It keeps a lot of white's opening advantage, and with this move we are entering the closed Ruy Lopez, which is the main theoretical line from which all the popular variations such as the Chigorin, the Karpov variation and the Breyer variation, which we are going to cover today, branch out from. And first let me point out one thing in this position. Knight takes e4 is a bad idea for black here, even though the pawn seems to be hanging. If black plays knight takes e4, then white is able to play rook to e1, attacking both the knight and the e5 pawn, and after the knight moves attacking the bishop simply exchanges on c6, removing the defender of e5, and after d takes, knight takes e5, threatening a discover check on the king, so bishop to e7 and d4. And in this position white has not a winning advantage, but he stands much better. He has much more active pieces, black has compromised his pawn structure, and he is a few tempi down in development. So after castles, the pawn can't be taken, and black usually in 99% of the games continues with bishop to e7, preparing to castle, and white plays rook to e1. And now this is finally defending the e4 pawn, and now this is really threatening the e5 pawn for the first time, so black has to react. White is aiming to capture the c6 knight, removing the defender, and just simply win e5, so the best way to stop that is to block the bishop, therefore b5 is played. So b5, and b5 has become the main move for a good reason. It opens up a square for the light squared bishop, it blocks the white bishop on a4, and it also gains valuable space on the queen side. And white of course retreats the bishop with bishop to b3. And from this position, both sides develop their pieces in a way that still fights for central control, and the d4 and the d5 breaks. And one downside of black playing b5 on last move is that white is now able to open up the a file at his own leisure with a4, and this gives additional attacking prospects to white on the queen side, as opposed to black, who can't decide whether the queen side will be open or not. So, another thing, I would like to mention, if you are unfamiliar with this opening theory of the Ruy Lopez and how to enter the closed Ruy Lopez, I would recommend you watch the video on the theory of the Ruy Lopez or the Spanish game in general. I will leave the link in the description below. But after bishop to b3, black now continues with d6, which is opening up the bishop and solidifying his e5 pawn finally, because black is aiming to attack the bishop on b3, the light squared bishop on b3, which is white's most powerful piece, and he's going to do that by playing knight to a5. And without d6 being played, the e5 pawn would fall. It would be attacked by the f3 knight. And now that d6 was played, white has to make an escape square for the bishop, and giving up the bishop for the knight would be positional defeat and positional suicide for white. So white plays the only move in this position, c3. And now if black attacks the bishop can retreat to c2, and black would be wasting a move with knight to a5. So black now just castles, finishes development in this position. And here, white plays the last move of common theory in the closed Ruy Lopez, so to say, the last move before the closed Ruy Lopez branches out into several different variations. He has to prevent black from attacking d4 and stopping the d4 push. And the only way black can put more pressure on d4 is indirectly by pinning the f3 knight. So black would like to play bishop to g4, and bishop to g4 would pin the knight, therefore reduce the defense of d4, and white wouldn't be able to strike with d4 in the center. So white has to stop that. He stops it with h3, and this is now preventing the bishop from pinning the knight. And this is the final position of the closed Ruy Lopez. This will have been played a tempo in almost all higher rated games, and you absolutely have to know this position and memorize it. And you also have to know the reasons behind each move. So this is absolutely crucial. You have to remember that white is fighting for the d4 break the whole game. He is reinforcing it with c3, with the knight on f3, with the queen on d1, and that's his main idea in the center, and black is aiming to stop that, and he's doing that with his e-pawn, with his knight. He will eventually try to play c5, he will perhaps try to play f5, and he was aiming to pin the f3 knight as well. So the whole idea of the opening is revolving around the d4 break for white, the d5 break for black, and the control on all sides of the board, but mainly in the center. And from this position, the closed Ruy Lopez branches out, and today's subject is the Breyer variation of the closed Ruy Lopez. The other lines branching from this position will be covered in separate videos. The Breyer variation starts after black plays knight to b8 in this exact position. And you might think this move is strange or underdeveloping, but it's actually very logical and extremely useful in this position. If you think about it, the knight has already served its purpose of defending the e5 pawn when it was necessary, and he has no use on c6 anymore now that the center is solidified with d6. And the knight is thus being transferred to a much more useful square, and it's being given a more important role in the center, in both defense and in the attack. And the plan is to remaneuver the knight from b8 to d7, a square from which it can support c5 and e5. And the second main purpose of the move knight b8 is that it allows the c pawn to move, so it's no longer blocked by the knight. And thirdly, the bishop on c8 can now develop on the long a8 h1 diagonal, which is very important. So the move knight to b8 definitely makes sense. White now replies with d4 in this position, striking in the center. And this is basically the only move white could consider after knight to b8. Everything else is far too inferior, far too slow, and it's not using the fact that black did play knight to b8, wasting a tempo pretty much and not playing an aggressive move. And d4 is finally gaining central space white fought for since the start of the opening, since e4 and knight to f3. And now he can finally do that because black wasted time to remaneuver his knight. And the second purpose of the move d4 is the knight maneuver, which is thematic for the Ruy Lopez, for the Breyer variation, but for several other lines as well. And since white played c3 to be able to push d4, the b1 knight has only one square, and that's the d2 square. And the plan white has is to attack black's kingside by transferring the knight to g3 and then ideally to f5. or as Ben Feingold would say, knight to f5. So the knight has a very good plan of going to d2, to f1, and to g3, which is very ambitious, but it's actually very much achievable in the Ruy Lopez, and both sides get to achieve their plans without too much confrontation at the start of the opening, because the Ruy Lopez and especially the closed lines are very much maneuvering positions. So in this position, after d4, Black continues with knight b to d7. Black continues with his own plan, and he has a developing plan as well. He will get his rook to e8, plays the bishop to f8. The knight is now very good on d7. He will play g6 to activate the bishop. The light squared bishop will develop to b7, and Black will eventually strike in the center with c5 now that the pawn is able to move. And that's the beautiful thing about the Breyer variation. Both sides push their own ideas without too much fighting until the maneuvering is done. And this is actually a very good opening to learn how to remaneuver your pieces when you have a lot of time to do that, because unlike in some Sicilian positions, the Scandinavian, or I don't know, the Pan of Caro-Kann, this position actually gives you time to maneuver, and you won't be punished if you make a single mistake. But the side that makes a mistake will suffer later on because of it. And it's crucial to know where your pieces go. So studying the Breyer will definitely help you with knowing where your pieces should be, even in other lines and in other openings. After knight b to d7, White now continues with knight b to d2, starting and continuing his knight maneuver to g3 and to f5. Bishop to b7 by Black, developing the bishop, but also now attacking the e4 pawn for the second time, and White now has a great way to defend. He retreats the bishop to c2, defending the pawn. And from here, of course, that was another purpose of c3, that White is now able to defend with bishop to c2, because otherwise he would have to play a strange move such as queen to e2 in some positions, and the pawn is still sufficiently defended, but it could change very fast. Rook to e8 here by Black, reinforcing e5, and White just minds his own business and continues to transfer the knight to g3. So knight to f1, bishop to f8, and knight to g3. And White has now achieved his perfect opening setup. Both knights are optimally placed for attack, the bishops are staring at Black's kingside, and the queen is ready to jump into h5. And from this position you can see why the Breyer is a potentially great attacking position for White, and why it offers so many attacking prospects, and why the games often turn out to be tactical brilliances. And Black now first of all has to stop knight f5, so g6 is a must-play move. He has to play g6, taking away squares from the g3 knight and also giving more scope to the f8 bishop. And White now finished his kingside development, and the theoretical continuation here is to fight for an advantage on the queenside as well. So White strikes with a4, and that's using the fact that Black weakened himself with b5, which once again is not a bad move. It was the best move in the opening, but it also has a downside, and that's the fact that White is able to open up the a file when he feels like it. And Black is able to strike back in this position with a move he prepared a while ago by entering the Breyer variation and transferring the knight back to b8. He plays c5. And the best move as a reaction to c5 is actually just to close the center down with d5, and Black now replies with c4. And the position after c4 is considered to be the main starting position of the Breyer variation of the closed Ruy Lopez. And this is the position you will get in almost every game, if you know the theory and if your opponent knows the theory, and this is the absolute best line for both colors. And now Black has a solid position, a great square for the knight in c5, and he has great attacking prospects as well. And it's considered to be almost completely equal. And from here the games actually start, and players can branch out into several different lines. There is around 700 Grandmaster games from this position, so a really large database to study from. And from this position White will usually continue with bishop to g5. This is the most commonly played move, threatening to play queen to d2 and attack the h6 square twice. So Black has to react immediately with h6, preventing that, chasing the bishop away. The bishop goes to e3. And from this position the games continue in several different ways. I'll quickly show you one sample game, or a part of one sample game. It was played between Anish Giri and Sergei Karyakin in 2014, and just to show their middle game ideas and how White managed to exploit his opening advantage. Sergei Karyakin was Black here. He continued with h5, expanding on the king side. queen to d2, Giri finishes development and connects rooks, knight to c5, using the strongest square black has in the Breyer variation and setting up his octopus knight. And Danish Giri immediately takes the monster knight with bishop takes c5. And I think placing the knight on c5 was a mistake, perhaps because white just played bishop to e3 and he was prepared to give up his bishop for the much more active knight. So d takes c5, queen to e3, attacking c5, rook to b8, knight to f1, bishop c8, knight 1 to d2, and white stands better here, but Anish has smartly changed plans. He's no longer pushing all his pieces to the king side to attack, and he was able to exchange Karyakin's strongest piece, and he is now centralizing and reinforcing his strong center. And this was only a 5-minute game though, so Sergei shouldn't be blamed for his errors, but I wanted to use a blitz game as an example on purpose, because it relies almost on pure intuition, so it's easier to see what the players are thinking about automatically in a position, which occurs from the Breyer opening. The position continued with bishop to d7, a takes b5, a takes b5. As you can see, Giri is now able to open up the a file to his own advantage, rook to a6 infiltrating, and he is much better now, and that's all because of the b5 pawn push by black in the opening of the Spanish game, and a4, which is thematic for the Breyer variation. So remember the a4 move. Just you have the option to open up the a file when the position suits you best. So rook to b6, rook a7, queen to b8, challenging the rook e to a1, queen d6, bishop to d1, and there is no need to go through the game any further. Anish Giri managed to win convincingly. This position is almost completely winning for white. But how he did it is key to understanding the Breyer. He used his main assets in the position, the strong d5 pawn, the a file, which white decided to open when it suited him best, and the provocation of black's weakening kingside moves g6 and h5, which are also very important, which you provoke by playing queen to d2. And it's also very instructional how he maneuvered the knight all the way back from g3 to d2 once more, even though he wasted 3 moves to put it on g3 in the first place. But the knight was needed in the center much more. And Sergei went wrong in this position, and he allowed white everything he wanted, and he gave away the a file, the king side, the king safety, and the c5 knight in a very unfavorable fashion. So this was one sample continuation of the opening. Let me just run over the opening once more, just to recap. After white plays h3 in this position, so the closed Ruy Lopez, the Breyer is knight to b8, transferring the knight to d7 into the center. White strikes with d4, and the game continues with knight b to d7, continuing his plan. White now starts his own plan of transferring the knight from d2 to f1 to g3 and to control the f5 square and start an attack. And the basic plan is to get both bishops to aim at black's king, to get the knights to jump into h4, h5. The queen is looking at h5, so the game continues with knight b to d2. Bishop to b7, black is developing on the long diagonal. Bishop to c2, he has to defend d4, rook e8, and now both sides develop normally. Knight f1, bishop f8, knight to g3, g6, stopping knight to f5. And it might seem as if black is on the defensive throughout the whole opening, but black actually has a lot more prospects, which I couldn't show all of them in one video, it would be just too long. I would recommend studying games from old masters such as Vasily Smyslov and Anatoly Karpov in this position, or from the newer masters you should check out Gata Kamsky. And there is also there is 700 games from the main line of the Breyer, and studying them will definitely help you understand how to play the position much better. Okay everyone, once again I would like to remind you that if you would like to see the main opening Ruy Lopez, the theoretical lines, you should check out the video. I'll put the link in the description below. And I hope you liked this video on the Breyer variation, and I hope you got to learn the position and how to play it. Thanks very much for watching, and stay tuned for more chess videos. Thanks very much, see you later, bye.